What's up, everybody? This is the As Above, So Below podcast, and today we have another amazing guest joining us. My name is Gunnar Andrew, my co-host Andrew Swayze. We are super pumped to introduce our guest, Tyler Rossmann. So, first off, Tyler has been a friend of mine for a long time now. And when I say he's been a friend for a long time, I should also get into what that actually means. We have spent time together in Minnesota. We've spent time together in Florida. We've spent time together in other parts of Florida. In most recently Montreal, Canada. He's been everywhere. We've supported each other, and I'm super stoked to tell his story, let him give us the insights on all things Tyler, all things strength, all the good things in life. So Tyler is from Eagan, Minnesota. He went to St. Michael's College where he studied economics in Vermont, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And I would describe Tyler as someone who intimately knows himself and serves others all over the world. He has done that as a performance coach, as a volunteer working with elephants. He's done that now full-time as a professional videographer, where he works with weddings, he works with adventurers, he works with fitness. But most importantly, Tyler is Tyler. And Tyler, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty excited to be here. This is my first official time being on a podcast, so I'm pretty stoked, pretty pumped, and yeah, I'm just ready to have a good time.
Amazing. Andrew?
Awesome. I'm pumped. I've met Tyler before. He's done some amazing work for me, and I'm excited to get the opportunity today to learn a little bit more about Tyler and his story. So I'm excited as well.
So I gave a little background there, just some highlights, some stars in the sky. Tyler, where are you from?
So I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and grew up in the suburbs. And yeah, I went to college out in Vermont, and then spent time out in New England, fell in love with it. And then I had an eating disorder when I was in college. And so I actually moved back to Minnesota after to go through treatment. And then that's kind of where I've had my base now, but I travel very frequently. So I feel like more of a nomad, and Minnesota is my base.
Beautiful. So you go to Vermont for college.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the decisions that led you to go to Vermont? And then I know you studied economics. What were the interests that led you that way?
So my family was really tough growing up. We had a lot of not good things, and I honestly just wanted to get away from all that. I wanted to get away from a lot that was going on at home, and I have an older sister, and she was the first person in our family to actually leave the state to go to school. She went to a school in Illinois, and so she was one actually kind of that inspired me to look beyond the state and experience something new. So I applied to 14 colleges, not in Minnesota, and I ended up there were 3 different ones that I was looking into, and then St. Mike's was the final one on the list. I fell in love with it as soon as I visited, and it was my first time in Vermont, first time in really that whole area. I had no idea that Ben & Jerry's was there. Once I found that out, I was sold. I'm let's go. But Vermont's very similar to Minnesota. There's a lot of outdoor stuff. I'm very adventurous. I love trying new things. I was really inspired from my mother at a young age to try things. So living in a new place. When I actually got to college, I was a psych major, and then I switched to economics because I took an econ class. But that's where I also developed filmmaking, because I took one media studies class and fell in love with that. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of trying new things, and that's kind of what led me to getting out and just exploring and seeing what's out there.
So with those steps taken, a lot of, open your eyes to new possibilities, different classes, spurred on new interests and new passions. Um, would you say there was a specific moment in your college career where you're like, this is what I want to be doing?
No, not at all. The thing with me is that I thought that I was going to be an economics professor. I thought I really wanted to be, I loved my economics advisor. I was really into collaborating with other people. I loved the study of economics, and I loved just being with people. I thought I'd be a really good professor because my professor thought I would be. So that was what I originally was thinking of. But then I did my senior thesis on food waste and was like, wow, maybe I could get a job with the state of Vermont, because that's what I actually did get an offer after that. And then I was just like, do I want to do that? And then I was dating somebody who lived in Connecticut, and she was just like, well, I'm going to be moving back. Do you want to like get a job closer to there? And I'm like, well, I could get something in finance, like as an analytical position. But for me, the thought of working in 9 to 5 cubicle really was something I did not want to do. And so I was really passionate about economics, but there were so many other interests that I had, and I didn't really know what to do. I think a lot of us, when we're younger, we have pressure and expectation to kind of do something. And that's when I was also going through like really bad portion of my eating disorder, and I knew I needed help first. So instead of making a decision on where to get my first job out of college, I decided to take a step back and like go to recovery. And then during that year period, I got a job in elementary schools working with children. So like something completely unrelated to anything I was doing. But I did work at a preschool in college. I love working with children. And so I decided to get a job that was fun and more upbeat and energetic while I was going through treatment. And then that just kind of spurred. And so, yeah, for me, it just seems like I'm always pulled with a different thought of something or a different interest. And I'm like, do I want to do that? Or do I feel like I should do that? Or other people expect me to do it? And so I'm constantly thinking of that. But yeah, I'm a very go with the flow. Once I feel something, I like to just kind of see what happens.
That's really interesting to hear your story of going from being an economics major to then working with children. I imagine that's all part of the journey, though, and you learning more about yourself. I'm curious, like for myself personally, I call it shiny objects, where I am really intrigued by something, like something maybe around food or it's around surfing, like whatever it is, like, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to go try that. And it sounds like you may have had like a similar experience. There's lots of things that you're interested in. Although in like the world, like specializing in something is important, and that's what allows you to have a career and to make good money. I'm curious, when it comes down to this like kind of shiny object syndrome, how do you navigate that? And then how did you get into videography, and how did you choose that?
Good question. So yeah, I definitely think that there are a lot of possibilities that came up that I was like, ooh, I want that, or ooh, I want to try that. And I really I talked with my mom a lot, because she knows me better than probably anybody, to try to think about like fundamentally as a person. I have a lot of interests and a lot of things that I would be interested in, but like there's usually some things that are a little bit more important, or some things that are a little bit more meaningful. And those can kind of also relate to like what I value as a person. So when navigating through those different things for me, I really try to go with my gut and the things that was happening at that time. And having an eating disorder was actually the biggest shift, because once I went through treatment for that first year, that's when I really figured out how to have a better relationship with food and exercise, because I was abusing both. And that's when I started CrossFit. And so I started CrossFit after that at the encouragement of my therapist. And then I got into, I became inspired, wanted to become a coach. So I became certified and started coaching. And that's when I met Gunnar at the gym. Well, I mean, I met him in high school technically, but like that's when we started working together. And then how it relates to video is that fundamentally for me, the one thing that was constant in my life that kind of wasn't a shiny object was film and photo. So from when I was 3, there's a photo of me actually having a kitty camera where like, you're a little kid and you're just taking photos. And I was like obsessed with it. I thought it was phenomenal to be able to freeze a moment in time. Like if you think about a photo, it's a moment in time that is frozen forever. That is insane. I thought that concept was crazy as a kid. So I would always take photos. And when our family had like a camcorder that was on your shoulder kind of thing, one of those old ones. And I would like take that around. I would like film family vacations and things. And I loved it. Like you could record audio, so you could hear people laugh. You could remember expressions and things people said. And it was so amazing to be able to like have those memories. And then again, be able to like have them forever. So ever since I was a little kid, photo and video were like some things I really, really liked, but I never thought it was like a job. Like it was just fun. And so as I progressed through all these different things that were pulling me, or I was thinking about as I was getting older, the one thing that was constant in me was film and video. And that's something I never thought would be an actual thing I could make money off of. I personally was embarrassed to make videos. I made a YouTube channel when I was in high school, when YouTube wasn't really like as mainstream, and I was like embarrassed about it because I was making random skits and like I didn't want people to know, so I didn't tell anybody. But as time went on, I just continued to make it and shoot and things because I loved it and it was fun and it's what made me feel whole. And how I kind of started was when I got my job as a performance coach. And I actually shot Gunnar. I did a little mini series on him during the Open. And it just kind of continued my love of like shooting things and documenting what's going on. And then I started getting into weddings. I started getting into other areas of like real estate and music videos. And I was stunned, absolutely shocked that people would be willing to pay me for video work. Because again, at the time, I was a YouTube kid like from way back when. I didn't really think it was possible. And it was just weird. So for me, I never ever saw it coming. And it was very kind of, whoa, weird, trippy how things end up working out the way they did. But I personally would never have wanted it any other way. And I am like super grateful to be able to do something that I absolutely love ever since I was a little kid and like make it a reality and be able to travel and meet people and document and tell stories. So I feel pretty special about that.
I'm flattered. I didn't have the perspective until now that video series we worked on, this is
2018.
18?
Yeah,
2018 was like an initial project, as you mentioned. How would you say your style in videography has evolved?
Yeah, so
since starting.
Yeah, so my style before was like skits. Like I was just really comical, comedic skits. I had like a video on YouTube that got like 80,000 views off of me making fun of being a Minnesotan and like talking with an accent. And so that's what it was like. When I was in college, I took a course on adventure filmmaking. It was the only like technical education I ever got on video. And it was about like interviewing sea kayakers. And then we would go and shoot them interacting with other people that are learning how to sea kayak. And we would do rock climbers and stuff like that. So my style originally became adventure filmmaking, like mountain biking, things like that. From those videos, I actually had a couple that were engaged and they saw them and they were like, yo, we really like this content. We're very outdoorsy. We're actually getting married in a campground and we're doing, all these things. Would you be willing to shoot our wedding? And I'm like, I don't shoot weddings. But I was like, I can try. And then I fell in love with that. When I shot you, that was like the first fitness thing that I ever like shot. And so as time progressed, I really started noticing that I really liked live events. I really like weddings because I love the emotion. I love the energy. Everybody's upbeat. You can feel it. And that comes off in the camera, and then being able to use audio to tell more of a story and get more emotion. I love that. With fitness, you able to see similar emotion, but it's like the grit, it's the grind, it's just the constant, like, I'm working at this, like, with giving all out. Like, I love that. And you still can tell a story with that and have emotion and have energy. It's just different. So from like that time, I started focusing my attention more on weddings and fitness. And then every once in a blue moon, I would have some work with like a nonprofit or a college or something like that. But it wasn't as fun. It was just like, I enjoy it, but it wasn't like, let's go. It wasn't like, it didn't like light me up like a fuse and like get me going. And so like for me, weddings and fitness, because of the energy and the motion, that's what really kind of my niche has kind of come down to. And it's two things I absolutely love, and it keeps me going and it doesn't get me bored, because every fitness event or fitness athlete that I shoot is always doing something different. And every wedding, even though it's still a wedding, it's a different couple, different venue, different everything. So yeah.
That's so cool to hear. Like, what came to mind when you were sharing about like when you were a kid and you just naturally were drawn to photography and videography, it made me think of like, wow, this is Tyler's creative genius. And I imagine, I've shared this before on previous podcasts, that in everyone has like this innate creativity inside of them, and how we express it is uniquely different from person to person. A lot of my innate creativity comes from physical movement and the ability to physically express myself, and it's so cool to hear about that with you and your videography and your photography skills. And ultimately it's got you to this point where you now have this as a career. And then from there to even get more specific and really, really focus down on your, on weddings and then, live event type things, as opposed to, I forgot what you called the other type of events that you're shooting, but it just didn't really do it for you. And I've had a lot of similar experiences in my life as I've evolved as a professional, where I've learned that, like, okay, this is what I really like doing and I want to focus on it. And you get really specific. But you mentioned earlier that there was values that were important to you, and that you let these and your gut really guide the direction of your life. I'm curious, what are those values, and could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I would say one of the biggest things that I value in life is being real. I cannot not be like genuine. Like, it's if I say something, it's going to be like very true, because when I was younger, I used to bottle all my emotions. I struggle with depression and anxiety, and have since a younger age, but I was always told I couldn't talk about it. It was something that we didn't talk about in our family. And I was told as a guy not to say stuff and blah, blah, blah. And it just like hurt me inside and caused a lot of pain. So when I went to counseling when I was in high school, or not high school, college is when I started. It really opened me up to being my genuine self. And in being genuine, I have to talk about emotions and feelings and like not sugarcoat things, because that's what I was doing. So like being real is like one of the biggest things that I value more than anything. I really don't like inauthenticity in anything. So that's just like that's what I really like, tried and true. You just need being a genuine is like one of the things I value most. But besides that, it's about like just being caring. And I think a lot of times people that struggle are a little bit more appreciative of things. And so one thing that I really learned is that we're all going through our own battles in life, and being just caring and kind, genuinely, is something that I've never gone wrong with. And so it's just something that I've had so many instances when someone's having a bad day or something and you just give them a smile and like, you don't know what they're going through, but like it makes the biggest difference ever. And, or, you know, if somebody walks in the room and they just are like, hey, like, hi, you know, like your name, it just makes you feel better. So like being kind and caring are things that I really value because I think they make the world way better. Um, and then I would just say being empathetic. It kind of relates to all of it, but empathy, like being able to understand what other people are going through, is really what also allows us to navigate difficult times a lot easier, especially if there's like misunderstandings in relationships or fighting or just any conflict or anything. But you can also be a better friend. And when you know that, you know, someone's going through something, it's different being like, oh, like, I'm sorry, like that's stuff. But, or, you know, being like, hey, I know that you're like, for a specific person, if you know them really well, if you really understand who they are as a person, it's better able to help them. So like if somebody, I go off love languages a lot. My love language is quality time. And so if I know somebody else's quality time, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to spend like time with you. Let's go play a sport for an hour, or let's go make a puzzle because I know you really love that. And let's not put our phones away. Some people are like, they love, you know, random acts of service. So sometimes, you know, for my mom, like if I am with her, I'll like do something for her and it'll be like the greatest thing ever. But it goes back to like being empathetic and understanding what other people are going through, but also knowing and observing how other people are doing things. And I guess I don't really know if I feel like I'm kind of rambling on at this point, but I feel like to me, those are all things that are things that I care about, as things that I value, is like understanding others, and because that's what makes a fulfilling life, in my opinion, and just being a genuine, caring person.
So the amazing thing about what you're just telling us is how it relates to the mission of our podcast, right? Our goal is to promote self-responsibility in all ways. And Andrew and I have talked on this many, many times. Like, if we have awareness and we have discernment, we can be mindful of our life. And what you're describing there is, one, being empathetic. You're taking in all this information and understanding, like, this may not be mine to address. This may be mine to address, but I can show up and understand that people are going through things. And at the same time, being real with yourself, right? Like, I'm so fortunate to get to spend time with you, and we've been amazing places side by side, and like, that's being real, right? Like, that's what you want to be doing. Go do what you want to do. I think those are absolutely values that we can all relate to, and hopefully inspire into others. With that, if you were to describe strength and what it means to you, how would you define strength in your life?
Strength to me is all about courage. So there was a time that another thing I wanted to do was sell my own bucket hats, and I actually created a line of bucket hats, and on it I put grit. And underneath grit, I put unyielding courage. And that's how I defined strength for me, because there's been a little, like, I can't overemphasize how we all know that life is tough and there's a lot of hard things that happen, and we all have our fair share. And the moments that matter most, in my opinion, are the moments when you keep going. And so I define that as strength, as when you just have that unyielding courage to keep going. Even if you don't know what's going to happen, even if it's like your back's against the wall, if you're at rock bottom, if you feel like you're at rock bottom of rock bottom, just continuing to go, I think, is the biggest thing. And then the other flip side of strength is something that I think is overlooked. It's being willing to ask for help. and putting your ego down. I struggled so much again because I never felt comfortable expressing myself and asking for help. And I've been in really bad situations where if I just would have asked for help, it would have meant the biggest thing. And as I've grown older, I've realized it is totally okay to ask for help, but it means that you really know yourself and you know your capabilities. And if you're at a point where you seriously cannot go any further and you're like really hurting, it's okay to ask for help. And so I describe that as having strength, and then just having courage to keep going. Those are kind of the two things I would say.
Amazing. This is already turning out to be a wonderful interview. Andrew, go ahead.
I was just, acknowledging the beauty of those statements there. Being willing to ask for help is being vulnerable, right? And I think in American culture, in a lot of cultures, like you mentioned before, men are like, quote unquote, supposed to keep it to themselves, like keep it bottled in. And that was what you were taught when you were younger. And for me, I had a similar experience, although it wasn't as explicit. It was maybe a little bit more implied, and you kind of just think that this is what you're supposed to do. But when I've been vulnerable in my life and I've either sought out help or expressed myself in a way that might not be like typical for men, usually that's brought me the biggest relief and allowed me to move forward. And that's part of taking self-responsibility for yourself. It's just like you said, acknowledging these things and understanding why it's important to share. And I like that you said about like courage as well, because I think that's in a way like pretty synonymous with being vulnerable. You have to have courage. You have to have courage to step out on your own and to do your own thing, to work for yourself. You have to step out and have courage, or you have to have courage when you want to step out and share certain emotions and thoughts that you have that are personal to you, because you never know what the other person on the other side receiving that information is going to say. But usually I've found in my experience, it always works out for the best. And it always is like this big weight off your shoulder. It's like, like that felt good.
Oh, yeah.
And as human beings, like it's important to connect. And I've learned that as well. And the more I've matured and evolved, I've realized that, and connecting with people, and like we are right now, like this feels good. This feels great to be able to have this conversation. So I just want to acknowledge you for that and say thank you for sharing that information. Is there anything you'd like to add, Gunnar?
I agree with all that's been said there. One thing that just came back to me is like being courageous also means seeing something that may look like a risk and going ahead. And I know a story, but I want to hear it from you, Tyler. What do risks look like in your life? Where do they come up?
Yeah, so I actually have it tattooed on my arm. Right here, it says keep taking risks. Quick story. So this was basically inspired by one of our high school teachers, Mr. Kinsley. He really helped me I had a really hard time in high school. And he was probably the number one teacher that helped me kind of overcome a lot of my insecurities and encouraged me to try new clubs and sports. And so I ended up doing wrestling. I tried cross-country skiing after I got hurt and couldn't wrestle. And then I tried track and field. I tried pole vaulting, never pole vaulted in my life. I ended up falling in love with it. I joined a bunch of clubs and activities. And by the time I went to Uganda on a service trip, I went to Guatemala on a service trip. And this is like former Tyler would probably, was too nervous, too scared to do that. And so by the end of senior year, I felt like I was ready for the next chapter, the next phase. And so my teacher on graduation day, he gave me a letter, and the letter just said, Tyler, keep taking risks. And then it has had his initials, TK. And that was like the most profound thing ever for me at the time. It's something that I feel I had somebody in my corner that was encouraging me to do things that I didn't feel I was capable of trying. And so for me, risks became the biggest thing for me to, you don't know what's going to happen. I think, Andrew, you said that, like, you don't know what's going to happen, but like, just go out, and the most amazing things happen with risks. I mean, I still remember like the first time, I went on a date and like that was scary. I feel like we can all relate to a story like that, or just like the first time you do anything, like when I went to Vermont, I was terrified. It was like such cool, but it was the first time I was away from my family, and I I'd never, lived away, and it was just crazy. And so there's a lot of risks, and also, you have a degree in economics, but you're choosing to not do anything with your degree. If you have all this student loan debt and you're going to start a video business, I'm like, how do you do that? Like there's a lot of risk in that. And yeah, but I think the things that are the biggest risks are the most rewarding. And I just feel that the more you do, the stronger that you'll be, and it'll just grow your confidence, and you'll do really dope things like jump out of planes and bungee jump and all sorts of other stuff that I really enjoy doing.
You jump out of planes?
Yeah.
Is that like a hobby that you have?
I like doing it a lot. Yes. I'm not certified to do it solo yet, but I like skydiving. When I studied abroad in New Zealand, I went bungee jumping like 4 times. And yeah, I just like experiences because I think that's what life is worth living. I mean, this is going to sound weird, but I've thought about my own death a lot. So like I thought about the end of my life and how short we have time on here. And the song that I want to be played at my funeral is I Lived by One Republic. And it's a song that is just about like you gave everything. You gave life everything. And that's what I want to do. So like, I'm not going to be able to give everything if I don't take a risk. And that's kind of where this kind of, I guess, gets to, where it's, really choosing to want to get out there, because there's too many times I held myself back because I was too afraid, or mostly it was insecurities. I had a lot of insecurities, just like we all do, but that was what prevented me from going further. But once you get a little encouragement out of that shell, you just start noticing you're more confident, and it just kind of builds and builds like a snowball, and then you explode like an avalanche coming down the field, and you're like, woo, I lived. Let's go.
That's so cool. I've heard people talk about this before, the idea of keeping death in your mind, or like having a relationship with it. And I also heard someone also say like that's a big part of like what is going on in America as far as our culture. People have this fear around death, but when you can have this acceptance, like death happens to everyone, things die, and one day all the 3 of us are going to die, right? And understanding that then allows you to come back to the present, and then like, okay, I'm going to take risks because this is what life is all about. If you never take action, you never go out and you try new things, you have new experiences, then like life is pretty vanilla and boring. And you're inspiring me right now. Next week I'm going to Mexico, so I'm like, I'm really excited to go to Mexico now.
Let's go, baby. Yeah.
Yeah, have some new experiences. I'm gonna go surf. So anyways, that's enough about me. Yeah. Gunnar, you have anything to say? Sorry.
I mean, I the more that I've spent time with Tyler, and again hearing this, message again and again, is like it's inspiring me to just again act more courageously. And I think what goes along with courage is also curiosity to know what's next. Tyler, Andrew, and I have both read a book, and I'm currently rereading it, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and it's about the development of the masculine psychology. So going from boyhood, which is chaos, into manhood, which is order. And in my understanding is to become the person we're supposed to be, whether that's a man or a woman, is deeply rooted in understanding what drives us. And the only way you get to that is taking risks. And eventually you're going to have a moment where it's like, that was it. That's what I need to pursue. This is what I need to keep going at. And everything you've mentioned so far has really painted that picture for me, and imagine for our listeners as well, is if you don't know right now, good. Keep going forward. Be courageous. Keep taking risks. You can calculate the risks, yes. If you're a highly analytical, uh, percentage-based person, that's fine. But you're going to learn how to take risks in your own way. And hearing that, like, all right, just take the next step. What can I do now? What can I figure out? And what can I learn from this moment I think, is eventually the way we become a man. And it's also the way that we can address death. I think it's an amazing conversation that we can go more into. I would love to hear more of your thoughts on it. But like, are we all living? That's a tough question to answer, but we're all progressing towards death in some way, and how are we doing that is the most important thing. Um, yeah, if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I personally feel a lot of people just exist. I used to just feel like I'm existing there. So for more context, I have attempted to end my life. And when you're at a point like that, like I used to want to die and I used to actively try, and obviously I failed, but, you think differently about living and you think differently about existing and what you're doing. And a lot of times that I have conversations with people now, we talk about just kind of like getting into the routine. A lot of times people get into some sort of routine that's just so basic, they don't think about anything. And all of a sudden there's 2 years that go by. Oh, there's 5 years, and so on and so forth. And then if you take a stop and look, and like, it's like, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to do this, but I don't know if I can do it. There's a lot of moments like that I used to have. I've put a lot of limitations on myself based because I didn't think I was worth it. I didn't think that I was capable of it. I didn't think I had enough experience. I didn't think it was reasonable. And I just thought it'd be easier to not do anything. And with like having courage to take risks, it doesn't always have to be like the most insane risk. It could be like, I'm going to go a different way home from work and see what happens. Or it's going to be like, I'm going to call somebody on my phone that I haven't talked to in a really long time. Or it's going to say, I am going to forgive somebody that wronged me. And it's like little things like that, I think, is what really kind of helped me break a part of my past and start really, like, the biggest risk for me when I was younger was opening up. That was a huge risk. And I think that's the biggest and most challenging thing to overcome. But if you just say like one thing to somebody that you care about, somebody that's close, and just say like, hey, I'm scared of sharing my feelings. Like, that in itself is a risk, just opening up, kind of going back to the being vulnerable that Andrew talked about earlier. But it's also like a starting block that can come. But I think it's what allows people to slowly start feeling like they're living. And being a human being, in my opinion, means to feel, and not just like physical feel stuff, but like emotional and mental feel. Like, I feel like I'm alive. Like, I wake up and walk, and that's when I take time to kind of like, I'm not going to say the word necessarily like meditate, but I just kind of like let my brain go. And there's a lot of times that I'm just like, I feel alive. Like, I hear things. I'm like, wow, look at that frog. I never noticed that frog there before. It's croaking, like weird. But I just start noticing and recognizing that I'm human. And I think that that's what, for me, like getting back to the whole risks thing, when you take time to kind of like stop, that's also kind of like a risk, because I think a lot of us just keep going, and we like are always on our phones. And if you don't ever stop to put down your phone, you can't really think or acknowledge things. So like small things like that can make a difference to make us feel like we're not just going through the motions, but we're actually feeling like we're doing something on this planet. And it's like, I mean, do you go even further down? Like, I think it's crazy how our bodies work. I think it's insane that if you get a cut, like your body heals. I think it's crazy that like your muscles repair when we sleep and like our digestion works the way it does. I'm like, how does this even happen? Like when you really think about it, it's insane what our bodies can do. It's insane that we're human. I'm like, why am I not a flower? Why am I not a bird? And it's like, that's just, to me, that's crazy. And that's what motivates me to like want to keep doing stuff. But when you like take time to think about that, it's so cool. And I think people that really get out there and really live are the people that just acknowledge their own existence, and they just take time to pause and like notice things. um, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Crystal clear. Better than I would have said. Thank you again.
I love like your fascination with life. That's like the word that came to my mind when you were just describing all that right there. And it's like to go on that morning walk and just be in awe of the little things in life just brings you back to that present moment, and just it's like take a big breath in, you're like, yeah, this life is good. Like there's so many things that are to be appreciative about. Like the world is fascinating. Like somehow like we exist, and that's fascinating. Our bodies, everything about that is fascinating. I'm curious though. Look, Gunnar and I talk a lot about routines, right? I know you mentioned like routine as far as like someone's lifestyle, right? And routine in a lifestyle can be detrimental in a sense. Um, Although the routines that we talk about are the routines that are staples in our life that like bring us back to these moments where we can appreciate the little things and have fascination for the world, right? The morning walk, I'm curious, is that one of your primary morning routines, or are there little things that you do throughout the day that keep you centered and grounded in the present moment?
Yeah, so yeah, I developed a habit of walking during the pandemic, and that was pretty much the first. But the first thing I tried was walking 10,000 steps a day, and I just noticed that when I woke, I just started in the morning because I was like, I'll try to do a long walk in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And so I did that to hit my 10,000 steps, and it started. Then I stopped caring about the number because I noticed that I was getting it just day to day, and so I kind of stopped, going on like a specific like length of time walk, but I kept just waking up and going on a walk. So I would like get water and then go on a walk and then eat breakfast. And that is one of the habits I developed. And it's predominantly the main morning routine, I guess I would say, that I do. I tried meditating. I've struggled so hard meditating over like the span of 10 years. I've tried and just really struggled to make it a habit for more than 2 months. So I've tried to incorporate that, but for me, going on a walk is by far the easiest thing because I just try to notice things. I just try to notice like, oh, look at that cloud. I remember doing that as a kid. You'd always be like, oh, that cloud looks like a bunny. That cloud looks like a dragon. And so just started doing stuff like that. So that's kind of one thing I do. I've pretty much eat the same things. I have like the same breakfast. I have like the same pre-workout food. I have like the same post-workout food. I have the same like routine. So I like train like 5 to 6 days a week. And I like listen to like music when I go there. And then when I am coming back, I don't. So those are probably the things. And then one random thing is I journal every day, and I've been doing it for over 5 years. So that's been something I did. I did take a little pause it's a handwritten journal. I did take a pause, but then I started going on my computer, and I've been doing that. So I journal. That's probably the only other routine that I do, like habit thing that I do every day is I journal right before bed. So
Very cool. So those are solid practices right there. Like, I mean, the walking in the morning, you're checking off a lot of boxes there for the health. Just getting outside, light exposure in the morning, that helps with the circadian rhythm. I mean, the journaling too. I don't think there's any better practice for mental health than journaling.
yeah, it's so my biggest struggle, like, consistently, is anxiety, for like my mental health reason. Like, like specifically. And so dumping things out is like the greatest thing ever. And I realized that that's why I transitioned from a handwritten journal to a typing journal, because I can type way faster than I can write. So like when my head's spinning, I just like dump. I was like, "Bleh!" And it helps so much just get things out. And oh my gosh, yeah, that's definitely been one of my favorite things. Absolutely.
I'm curious. I've, I don't journal every single day, but I do journal, and I really enjoy the process of reflecting back on what I've journaled in the past. And unlike you, I do write it out, although that's just my practice. But I do enjoy going back and reflecting on it. Is that part of what you do with journaling, or is it just like a complete um, offloading of these thoughts
Yeah,
into the computer?
for sure. So the journal that I started writing on is actually 2 page. And so this one was like the year 1, and then this year's year 2 of the same day. So when you like read it, you actually see where you were like a year ago, and it has prompts like, what did you do? How did you feel? What are you grateful for? What's a challenge that happened today? How can you overcome the challenge? And then what is something that you savored? So like you can see those. And so I would always like look back at those and then see where I'm progressing. And doing that allowed me to see habits. So I noticed that like if something happened, like a trigger, that how did I respond or how did I react? Or if I was doing really awesome and I was feeling like on cloud nine, like what kind of events happened and how did I feel, and kind of like things like that. So I do, yeah. So I definitely have gone back and journaled. And in my typed journals now, I just do it the old fashioned Google Doc way. So I just have like tab of like every single day, and every once in a while I'll have like a specific thing I'll just go back to and read to try and see what I was feeling. I do think rereading them is helpful, because currently I feel like, I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like present me is different than like makes decisions differently than like a year ago me or like 2 years ago me. So like I'm like, dang it, why didn't I do that 2 years ago? And then it's like, or why didn't I think that way, or why did I blah blah blah. I like will go back to that time, and I'll like read like what I was doing or feeling, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Like past me, that's the best thing I did at the time. So present me has to believe past me. And so that's kind of how I would say I like to reread things and kind of go back and just kind of check on that.
Very cool.
Yeah, this is really useful to hear. Yeah, I agree with Andrew's statement on journaling just being the one practice that we can all do. You know, a lot of the clients that I work with when I'm doing mindset coaching, the act of journaling is the difficult thing. It takes courage to sit down and write out your thoughts and your feelings and be consistent with that. And recently I had a breakthrough with one of my clients where the thought of journaling had this really big monumental task sitting on their mind. And it was, I need to write 3 pages every time I journal. And when I heard that from them, I said, you could write 1 sentence, you could write 1 word, and that's journaling. Where am I right now? I'm at home. You start something like that, as simple as that. It allows you to then keep taking risks, keep being courageous, and all right, I am feeling this. I am seeing these people in my life. I am wishing for this to happen. How am I going to get there? All of that can start by just putting 1 word, 1 sentence down at any time. So, having the consistency that you've had, Tyler and Andrew as well, journaling really is, in a very similar way, taking that moment and freezing it in time. Like taking a photo of where you are.
I guess I never thought that. Yeah, it's true.
A mental photo of where you're at in time. Yeah, that's a cool analogy.
Yeah. So for me, like going into a competitive season and trying to be the best in the world at something, I practice my journaling before I get out of my car every time I go to the gym to work on my craft. And what I've developed into is I used to just write all of my mantras down and like, all right, I'm affirming myself. And what I found was that was only half of the picture for me. It's like, I also need to write down things that I'm struggling with and, be really honest with that. Like, all right, why am I upset about this right now? Why am I feeling that I'm maybe inadequate at one thing? And it's dragging everything else I'm thinking about down. And being able to put that out is freezing that in time. Like, I think Tyler's point there of looking back a year or 2 years and going, why did I not think of that? Well, you then give yourself grace and go, I was thinking that then, and it allowed me to then develop this process. And now I see things with more, more clarity, more vividness, all of the above, because I struggled at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's helped me is like, I can look back at, I actually just got a photo memory while we were recording here of 3 years ago today, I was finishing the French Throwdown in Paris, France. And I often forget that I was there. If I'm too invested in this, day to day, like, I need to get better, 1% better every day. It's like, well, what was I doing 3 years ago? And what was I thinking? And how does that foundation now allow me to be my best self, which is far different than my best self then. Mm-hmm. And it's just so cool to have this conversation amongst the three of us and our listeners. I'm sure having these images of, you're right, I have done a lot of things. I've been successful in overcoming doubt and overcoming challenge and taking risks. And all those successes are repetitions. And we build confidence that way to even be more courageous, to be more helpful, to take bigger risks or more at the same time. Like, all spreading that out. And with that, I see this as like, all right, I'm more aware now, I'm more discerning, and then I'm more mindful. Tyler, do you have a like consistent thought of like something you want to do, but you haven't done yet?
There's a lot of things I haven't done yet that I want to do. I have them all the time, all the time. I think for me, it's how do I get there? So I think a lot about there's too many things I want to do. And so if I spend all my attention on everything, I'm probably not going to get very far. So I'm like, what's one thing I can try to like go into? And then does that work? Let's try. Let's see it. And yeah, so there's definitely a lot that I try to slow myself down on, because sometimes I get too excited about ideas and I forget about action. So I spend all this time researching and planning and thinking, but yet I'm like at the same starting point I was always a month ago or 2 months ago or whatever. And so I think for me personally, it's just been a matter of trying to learn how to try one thing and figure out how can I go about that one thing, even if there's all these other thoughts that come up and I want to try, and they're always coming and flowing because, that voice in your head's always there. And it's like, how can I still navigate this while trying to like not get distracted or overwhelmed by all these other things I'd like to try or do, or whatever voices are telling me to do something. So I definitely have been working on that. It's definitely not something I'm not perfect at, and I'm still working on. It's probably one of the things I'm working on most, just because I have too many interests.
I can completely understand that. I want to go to your tattoos.
Okay.
And yeah, I want to look at it. We've already talked about one. Keep taking risks, and okay. I think that's been a fantastic conversation point. My personal understanding of tattoos is they're symbols, mm-hmm. and in a way, taking a snapshot and freezing the moment, right? Like, mm-hmm. we can have memories that come up, and we can have things come from that. And you have some fantastic tattoos. Are there any that right now, like you just think of a story where like, all right, this is the symbolism behind this, and it means something to you.
Yeah, I mean, they all are pretty meaningful. The first one I got is this one. These are actually the 2 days that I attempted to end my life. So this was the first tattoo I ever got, and it's basically a memory of that this is like the past me, and it's something I don't have to be ashamed of. Because when I did it the first time, I didn't tell anybody, and when I did it the second time, I was found by someone, and I was so embarrassed. And it was like people are going to know that I'm not good. People are going to know, like, they're going to call me a freak. They're going to say stuff like that. But that wasn't the case. In reality, people wanted to help because they cared about me. And so for this is something I used to be really ashamed of, that I now, like, it was a catalyst for me wanting to live. So like I used to not want to live, and now I'm like choosing consciously every day that I want to live. So that's kind of the first one I got. I have a lot of in my inner arms. These are all initials of family members and friends who've passed away at a young age. And so they're people that I hold closest to me and that I want to live for. One of the people in particular, her name was Mariah. She was actually born the same exact day that I was, May 7th, 1994. And she died 8 days after our 16th birthday. And for me, that was one of the most profound impacts. That was when I lost my faith in God. I hated everything. I was like so lost and had no idea what to do. And over time, I had to really overcome a lot of thoughts about faith and life and what I'm doing. But I got these tattoos because I wanted to honor not only the person, but also honor the life. And again, going back to like choosing to live, like they're people that I want to choose to live for. Like they got taken away from this planet earlier, and I want to give back. So those are kind of those were actually the first two I ever got. I have a lot more. I would feel like I would spend a long time talking about it. But I would say the other most important ones are on my hand. There's a phoenix right here. So this is like an artistic version of a phoenix. I wanted to get it. It's got like a really long gooey tail that I like. And in the middle, it's kind of hard to see, but it's the sign of the eating disorder, like recovery. So it's basically like a variation of a heart. And when I went through that treatment, I had to learn to accept my body. I had to learn to accept myself for who I was. I used to have I hated everything about my body, yada, yada, yada. And it was really hard. So this tattoo I got on my hand because when I went through treatment, I felt like I was able to finally and firmly be confident and proud of Tyler, like me. And I never was able to say that again. I never said, I love you. Like when I went through treatment, I found the courage to say, I love myself. Like I accept myself and my faults and everything wrong with me. And so I felt like I was brought anew. So that's why I wanted to get the phoenix to kind of represent kind of rebirth and kind of like that. And then right next to this one, this is the most recent one I got. This is a dragon that kind of like wraps around this way. And it kind of symbolizes currently like where I'm at, where like I was a phoenix, got, kind of up. And now I feel like I'm like ready to annihilate the world with awesomeness because dragons are pretty cool. But it really was like a statement that's like, I am here, I'm strong. Kind of going back to our strength piece about courage. It's something that I have another one about courage right here, the 20. So this means 20 seconds. You only need 20 seconds of insane courage to do anything. This is from We Bought a Zoo. And so that was the first thing that really helped me get there. And then that kind of relates to this. And then on this arm, I have a bungee jumper because my biggest fear in the world used to be heights. And when I was studying abroad, having courage to do that really helped me, again, feel like I was creating a new self of me. And that's kind of also represented by the dragon of like I'm always creating a new self, a new version of myself. And I'm trying to go stronger as years go on. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot. I don't want to take up like a ton of more time because I feel like, whoopsie. I feel like if I did, I would just, I mean, I could talk about these for hours, but I have a lot, and I have like another one here and stuff.
But no, thank you so much. I mean, this is fantastic, and having spent a lot of time with you, we've had discussions about your different tattoos and how they work together. And at one point, you had mentioned to me, this is probably over 2 years ago now, where you're like, I want to start a podcast of my own, and I'm thinking about talking about tattoos. And that was an idea that you gave me. And I was like, well, I should absolutely touch on that, because where does that idea come from? And we got to keep taking those risks. So it's good.
If you can talk about tattoos for hours, it sounds like it's meant to be.
Oh yeah, that's what I love tattoos, and that's why whenever I see somebody with that tattoo, I always ask them, what's the story, like what's the meaning? Because basically all the things that like I feel like I've shared and we've talked about is represented in some form of ink on my tattoo. So it's something that I want to constantly be reminded of, that something is very meaningful to me, and it's how I want to live my life. And so that's for me how tattoos are like an expression of, and why I love them. And so yeah, it's kind of funny that you remember that, Gunnar. But yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I imagine, Andrew, you're thinking this too. Is like, Tyler, you should definitely do your own podcast, because you have so much to inspire and contribute to others, because you yourself have gone to those places and are constantly learning how to live.
I have an idea. You start a podcast about tattoos, and you have every person who comes on share all the stories about their tattoos.
That's a good idea. That actually is a good idea. Yeah.
Andrew, do you have a tattoo?
Thank you.
Although I've thought about getting one.
Oh, you should. Heck yeah.
It's a little joke between me and my friends who surf, but it actually might not be soon. We'll see. Where we all have our surf spirit animals. And my one friend, he's kind of like a skinny guy, so he's a seahorse. My other friend, he has no physical resemblance of a pelican, but he got the spirit animal of a pelican. And my surf spirit animal is a sea otter. So we were thinking we all get like tattoos of our surf spirit animals.
Yeah, I can see with an otter.
Yeah. The otter, I bestowed it upon myself. Although I like the otter because otters are very fun and they're playful. They like to go in the water and just have a good time. And that's how I feel when I'm out surfing, just having fun, playing, having a good time, just being in nature and being active. So we'll see. You'll hear about it when that happens. And then I can be on your podcast.
Heck yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Absolutely. I love it. I think we're at a fantastic place. I mean, there's so much that I have over a full page of notes taken from this conversation. And my hope is that everyone that does listen to this can take something away and continue to live and choose to live. A big takeaway there, and keep taking risks. Tyler, is there any way, or would you like to promote yourself in any way for people to find you?
I don't really do a lot of self-promotion. I guess if you wanted to see any of my professional work, you could go like weddings, Tross Films. So my name is Tyler Rossmann, so I go by Tross, Tross Films. You can also find me on Instagram. I have multiple accounts, but Tyler.Rossmann is where like my personal page is. And then from there, I have links to all of my other pages. But yeah, I do a lot of stuff. So I even have like a penny board channel, and I have other YouTube. I do a lot. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's, I guess, where people could find me.
Right on. Andrew, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at andrew.swayze. if you're looking for personal training in the San Diego area and you want to move better and get stronger, you can find me at Swayze_fitness, or go to SwayzeFitness.com.
Beautiful. And I'm Gunnar. If you're looking for mindset coaching and ways to explore your best self and solidify habits, you can find me on Instagram at Gunnar Regan, and my coaching page at Animus Coach, ANIMUS Coach. Working on a website, but I've been saying that for 2 years.
Nice.
We'll see what happens. But thank you so much again for listening to the As Above, So Below podcast. Please like, subscribe, share this episode, because I know it's going to make an impact anywhere it goes. So thank you so much, Tyler, for being here, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.
Peace.